Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk with Tom, the show where I casually talk about any show in animation or any topic in animation that I feel like talking about, and it has been a minute. I missed actually being seen instead of being behind a microphone, because I like being seen, because I'm vain. My hair grew back, things are different, the world is changing. We all know how much longer we got left on this rock floating through space until the aliens come along. And we're just like, yo, y'all need to get everything you've been doing together. I'm trying not to swear because YouTube doesn't like that. But we're talking about She-Ra today. Specifically, I want to talk about Catradora because Catradora is now canon. It is now a thing that happened. I was a critic of it for a while. I was just being a contrarian and I was like, yo, what if they didn't do that? What if they did something completely different? I wasn't like, yo, I hope they don't do this. I was just like trying to be big brain and be like, what if though? What if something else? So yeah, I'm happy. My heart was feeling all sorts of things when that moment happened and I was like, dog, this show is special. This show is amazing. It's been an honor to be able to follow this as it happens and be a part of the discussion as it happens. Not everybody gets to experience shows the way I got to experience She-Ra, and I'm forever going to be grateful for the fact that it gave me that experience. But not everybody's so high on Catradora. Some people are pretty critical of it, actually. People are being like, yo, Catra's toxic, Catra is abusive, they're glorifying toxic relationships. They're saying a lot of things, and some people aren't even saying that. They're just saying it's forced. They're saying that it wasn't done well, which I don't agree with, because like I was a critic of it. I was all for subverting the expectation and doing something different. So if you made me happy, and I think it's done well, then I don't know where these people are coming from. And I am not alone in that, because there are plenty of people out there who are also kind of critical, kind of skeptical about, okay, Catra's really toxic. Are you sure you want to portray a relationship between her and the main character? Is that really going to send a good message to the viewers, to kids watching? Is that really the best idea? And they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, no, they did it well. But I've yet to see anybody really explain why it's done well. I'm sure people have, because I can't see everything out on the internet, and that seems like a very plausible thing that has happened. I personally have not seen it. I've seen a lot of people just saying, yeah, it works, but nobody's explaining why. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I want to start by acknowledging that Catra, despite being very toxic, despite taking a lot of her problems out on other people, is not intrinsically an evil person. She's not intrinsically a bad person. She was just a hurt person hurting other people to deal with the fact that she was hurt. Which is very toxic, but it's not a reflection on a person's character, and it is solvable. But how do you solve it? Well, Noelle Stevenson and the crew at She-Ra decided to show us how. So you have to address Catra's toxicity, and to address that you have to ask, what made Catra so toxic in the first place? And the moment that is identified as the point where Catra started to go downhill was that pivotal, iconic moment in which Adora decided to be She-Ra and decided to join the rebellion instead of being with Catra in the Horde. And the reason that this was such an impactful moment for Catra is because Catra was putting Adora above everything in her life. Adora was her #1 priority. Their relationship, their friendship was the most important thing to Catra. And Adora was willing to throw it away just like that. And that deeply and personally affected Catra, because she is looking at it as, you mean so much to me, and I would never do something like that to you, and now you're going to just leave me behind. The one person she was counting on always being there would just do that to her. Because they were in a really toxic situation in the Horde, and Adora was Catra's coping mechanism. Adora was the one good thing in Catra's life. So once Adora left and betrayed the Horde to join the rebellion, Catra was at a loss. Because again, she not only lost the most important person in her life, but she realized that Adora didn't see her the way she saw Adora. Which was heartbreaking, and as we saw, led Catra down a downward spiral. But Adora didn't understand why there was a problem, because she was doing what she felt she needed to do, and nothing was stopping Catra from going with Adora. Adora even asked and begged Catra to come with her and join the rebellion, and they can fight against the Horde together, but Catra said no. From Adora's perspective, Catra was making just as much of a choice as her, and Adora was willing to respect that. However, Catra saw it as Adora not caring whether or not she was there, which says a lot when Catra can't even imagine facing the world without Adora. But the thing about Adora is when she feels a call to action to sacrifice something for the greater good, she will not hesitate. It doesn't matter if she won't be happy with what she has to sacrifice. If it's for the greater good, she sees it as that's more important. It's more important that things in the world are correct, that justice has prevailed and good has prevailed, than whether or not I am able to be happy. Which is also a big problem for Adora that she has to confront in Season 5, as she's saying that she has to sacrifice herself for the good of Etheria, and she has to do what Mara did when Mara's like, bro, I sacrificed myself so you wouldn't have to. I did this so you could be happy, and now you're sacrificing your happiness, which means that whatever sacrifice I made was in vain because you need to put your happiness first. And that was a mentality and habit that Catra was getting really upset with Adora with over the course of Season 5 because she kept seeing people try and take advantage of her for it. She saw Shadow Weaver try and use Adora's marauder mentality to try and manipulate her into doing something that could potentially kill her. And this is the same attitude that allowed Adora to be okay with leaving Catra behind in the Horde. Because she was doing it for the greater good, and to her that doesn't reflect how important Catra actually is to her. That's just not how it seemed from Catra's end. So after all of that happened, Adora was still reaching out, Adora was still trying to be friendly with Catra, and she didn't want to let their friendship fall apart even though they're on separate sides of the conflict. But for Catra, it was too late for that, and their relationship would only get more and more toxic. Catra was only building up more and more resentment towards Adora, and she was willing to take that out on her. She felt justified in doing that, and she didn't see anything wrong with that because in her mind, she was the victim here. But Adora could only take so much of that before she said enough is enough, and she pushed back, which was the correct thing to do. She drew a line in the sand and said, listen, I am not going to keep trying to help you if you would rather blame me for all of your problems than try to help yourself. She was justifying her behavior through the fact that she was justified in how upset she was with being betrayed and cast aside. But now she was getting to the point where her actions and the things that she was doing to cope with those feelings were starting to affect the people around her in a very problematic way. But she was too far gone to confront that. She was using that behavior to cope with her pain, so why should she have to change? Why does she have to apologize for how she's acting when all of these bad things have happened to her? She could not accept the idea that she was in the wrong because she was genuinely hurt. So if her feelings are valid, then by that logic, to her, her actions that she's taking, specifically actions that shut people out and protect her from being hurt anymore, have to also be valid, because they're in response to a very valid pain and trauma. But that's not actually how it works, and she would be forced to realize this because of Double Trouble. Because Double Trouble was the one who started stirring up all these things that Catra was not willing to address about herself. They call attention to the fact that she's putting on this tough, closed-off persona to pretend that she doesn't care about all the pain that she's in, when in reality she cares a lot, and it's destroying her. And then they acknowledge how it's her fault that she's all alone, because all the people in her life who actually did want to help her and actually did want to see her be happy, she had closed herself off to and pushed away, which forced Catra to realize, even if her feelings are valid, she was not justified in how she was treating people. And that was her turning point. Which this is very similar to what Glimmer was going through after her mother died, and she had to take on her responsibilities as queen. Because she was dealing with a legitimate tragedy, and she was dealing with so much responsibility, more responsibility than most people could even imagine, and she didn't know how to deal with those things, especially at the same time. And her response to that was to take all the stress and anguish that was building up inside of her and taking that out on the people who were close to her. And as a result, she would also end up pushing those people away. So that would put her and Catra on equal ground to start to build some sort of bond, and that would ultimately lead to Catra being able to re-enter Adora's life. And the fact that they used this character who is a main protagonist, a character who is treated as good for the entire show, they put her in a similar position as Catra, where they give her a very legitimate, a much more universally understandable situation of pain. And we see how she struggles with that, and how that makes her treat the people around her. And that doesn't excuse how Catra dealt with her pain, but it does make us consider the fact that maybe that doesn't mean that Catra is just intrinsically an awful person. it makes us consider that maybe there is a good person underneath all of that resentment and all of that deflection and anger. And this plants the seed that if Catra is willing to accept the help from people who genuinely want to help her and is willing to get better, then maybe that can make all the difference. But she has to accept that help first. So what would end up happening is Glimmer would actually be the one to inspire Catra to stop acting so self-destructively and try to be a bit more selfless. Because at this point, Catra was at the end of her rope. She had been coping with the pain of Adora's rejection by moving up the ranks in the Horde, and now she was up to Horde Prime, and she couldn't manipulate her way into overthrowing him the way that she had with her superiors before him. So since Prime's superpower is basically manipulation, like he manipulates people through all these different means, he was not going to be manipulated by Catra. His realization that her intention was to manipulate him out of his position and try and move up the ranks, that was putting a huge target on her back and putting her in a lot of danger, and was leaving her with a choice. Was she going to continue to keep blindly charging forward until she reaches the end of her rope and she can't move up anymore and she's just at Horde Prime's mercy? Or was she going to do that one good thing that Glimmer was asking her to do? One good thing that would inspire Adora to think that there might be some hope for her, so she would go and risk everything to save her from Horde Prime. And once Adora did save Catra, she was acting very closed off at first, because she was suspicious. She thought they all hated her, so what good could possibly come from trusting them? But when Adora makes it clear, we came out here because we care about you, we want to help you, we want you to get better, but if you're not going to help yourself, then fine, we'll leave you to fend for yourself and be miserable. That makes Catra realize that that's not what she wants. She realizes that she does want to be with Adora, and this might be her last chance to be able to do that. So she needs to set her pride aside, she needs to be more vulnerable, and she needs to be more patient. In my experience with manipulative people, one of the biggest red flags that you're dealing with someone who is just trying to manipulate you and get something out of you is if they treat you very loving, very caring, and very warmly, but then you see how they treat other people and it's not the same. It's very mean, rude, just the complete opposite of how they treat you. That's usually a very big red flag that they are trying to get you to like them or get you to trust them. And Catra, throughout the show, has had a habit of being toxic and manipulative, so it is completely reasonable to think, oh, she's just pretending to be good so Adora will trust her so she can betray her later. But the thing that made me believe this is legitimately Catra trying to change is the fact that she wasn't just being very kind and very patient, very apologetic for the things that she had done towards Adora. She was being that way towards everyone. She was being that way towards Entrapta. She wanted to apologize to Scorpia, and she was being more open with everybody. Of course, there's no obligation for anybody to be open and vulnerable to every person they meet, because that's not a good idea. But Catra was extremely closed off before this, so to see her just be able to open up a bit more to people and trust people a little bit more, like she did with Perfuma, that said so much about how far she's come. And it showed an authentic change to her behavior. There was no ulterior motive. She was trying to improve for herself. And I also really appreciate the fact that they did not treat Catra and Adora's reunion with finality. And what I mean by that is they didn't get back together and they're like, oh, we're friends again, everything's fine, they just go back to normal. There were bumps in the road, and that is realistic. There should be bumps in the road. When you have a falling out like that with somebody, it's not just gonna be you go back to them and everything's fine. Like, there is gonna be some time where you need to get back into the groove of things. You need to learn to trust each other again. You need to rebuild that relationship. So seeing them struggle to communicate and be fully open, seeing a bit of distrust still being there, while also seeing that balance out with some very extreme emotions of affection and admiration, because they were apart for a long time and they do genuinely care about each other. So there is a sense of like, I need to make up for lost time here. And Shadow Weaver played a big role in exposing how not perfect things were between them. And that's good, because they shouldn't be perfect. They should not be just everything's fine. There should still be problems they need to address. And that should come from an outside conflict or an outside agitator. And I'm not saying like, oh yeah, Shadow Weaver is solely in the right. If it wasn't going to be Shadow Weaver, it was going to be someone else or something else down the road that was going to bring out these issues. And because both Catra and Adora are shown to genuinely care about their relationship and genuinely care about each other, and have that strong bond. Their ability to work through that stuff is what told us, the audience, just how important it was for them to be together. So we would see them end up being a canon couple through a culmination and a meeting point between both of their personal arcs. Through Adora realizing how important it is to make her own happiness a priority, even when the fate of the world is on the line. And through Catra being vulnerable enough to tell Adora how much she actually cares about her after pretending for so long that she doesn't care about anything. So because all of this was done in a way that acknowledged the development and the personal journeys of the characters, where they needed to go, what weaknesses they needed to confront, I in no way see this relationship or Catra's redemption as forced. Especially with the fact that before this season even started, Catra was being challenged on her toxic behavior on a very personal level that would force her to move towards a better place, whether it was going to be easy or not. So with that, that's all I gotta say. I hope you have an awesome day. Roll the outro. Thank you so much for watching Let's Talk with Tom on the Roundtable. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss a video. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like, and you can comment down below to give us your thoughts, or you can find us at Roundtable Vids on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or you can find me at TomEPQM on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram. And I even have my own personal channel, youtube.com/TomEPQM. As always, my name is Tom. I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. See ya!